Let's talk. Let's talk. So before we get into some reactions and reviews here, I want to dive into a very interesting topic that kind of kind of got everybody's, um, ruffled everybody's feathers is the term I want to use here. But today I think we're gonna attack more of like a bigger topic, right? And we're gonna talk social media. We spoke about social media here on the show a couple times, but I think this one's gonna be a little bit different, kind of a more like update. I think the last time I spoke about social media was when Threads launched, right? I think when Threads launched was the last time I really spoke about socials, and that, I mean, as you can tell, didn't really pan out too well for artists. So let's talk about where everything is at as far as social media goes, for sure. So, sip a little coffee, but um, let's see here, man. So, hmm, where do we start? I mean, I think the big elephant in the room here is the Twitter policy in terms of service updates. So recently, Twitter announced not only is the block feature changing on the platform, right, but I think that's like not as big of a deal compared to what people are actually angry about. And they are definitely angry about using people's content for their AI system, right? Many of you know Twitter integrated Grok when Musk took over, probably not like long after, but um, that's kind of a part of the TOS now going forward is they have the ability to essentially scrape your content, right? So they'll be able to use whatever you post on their platform in X, Y, or Z for their artificial intelligence, right? Whatever that exactly vaguely means is up for debate. But a lot of people weren't happy about it, right? I mean, rightfully so. But my first thought was, this is kind of like the TikTok conversation that happened like last year, right? Where TikTok kind of added in their TOS that they have the ability to use any of your content in their advertisements, right? For free. And, to have like a free for profit license. Instagram is also doing more scraping for their AI, right? So now you have the option to opt out of the AI kind of scraping your content when it comes to Instagram and Meta and Facebook. So it's really a battle of the AIs right now. I don't really think that Twitter is in a good light because I do think that like the platform has taken a significant hit since the Musk takeover, right? But more specifically in the independent artists and the underground terms of things, um, I would say that the platform's changed, but it also hasn't changed, right? For those of us that have been here for quite some time, like pre-Musk, like 2018, like I've had my personal account since 2012 or 2011, right? So a lot of us have been on here for quite some time, and Twitter has always been like the go-to for a lot of independent artists. And it's been a while uh since I've really seen like an insane change like this. I think the last time it was Threads launching, I think was the last time people kind of were really like actively moving to another social media or kind of using both or X, Y, or Z. So it's been a while since we've been able to talk about this sort of topic. Now, the influx in new users for Threads and Blue Sky since this announcement with Grok and the block feature and things like that, they've obviously seen a massive influx of users, right? But I don't know where that's gonna lead to, right? Because that kind of happened with Threads, you know. Obviously, Blue Sky is definitely the superior platform here. I definitely think Blue Sky is more of like a Twitter clone than Threads is. Threads is kind of like its own thing, and Threads is really done nothing, like to be blunt, for any independent artist or underground creative. The platform is a engagement clickbait kind of wasteland. A lot of the stuff on that platform is not healthy. It's not like beneficial for anybody, and it hasn't grown the way that I had hoped it to grow. Because there was a point where I was thinking we were going to take submissions on Threads, right? Like that's the direction that I was like picturing. But fast forward till now, from launch until present day, it's like Threads didn't Threads didn't really pop off the way that, people really wanted it to. And that's for, multiple reasons, but um I don't know if that's going to happen with Blue Sky. That's kind of like my assessment with it, because even back when all this kind of happened and, everybody got on Blue Sky early, that platform didn't really even have like a DM system. You couldn't put links in your bio. It was still very, very bare bones. But now they've kind of updated the platform in a way where it's pretty usable now, right? It's definitely pretty usable. So I suspect the influx of users is definitely gonna continue, but I don't know if it's ultimately gonna hurt Twitter, right? Because for the average, underground artists or new artists, like, there's still a pretty big community on here, right? There's still a pretty big fucking community, and that could be for, again, multiple reasons, right? I definitely think it could be for um people just being so used to Twitter, right? And people not wanting to leave, but also, a lot of the bigger creators haven't left, right? If any of you watch Twitch streams or you watch sports or anything like that, everybody just kind of switched, they just changed the logo and they said fuck it. Like, you could definitely get like your average content and news and like breaking news and things like that over on Blue Sky as well. But you know, regardless of politics, like the fact that no major creators and platforms have like really left outside of like news people and certain individuals, kind of speaks volumes as to where like these communities are more important than like a lot of the political bullshit that people kind of try to lump in with it, because it's a very different thing. Like, the underground community has been on Twitter before Musk, and it will definitely continue to be on Twitter, right? Um, but I mean, you definitely got to admit after a certain point, like, the ship is being driven by somebody who's like actually fucking drunk. So it's like, you know, after a certain point, it's like, okay, like, what happens? You know what I mean? Like, what happens? So only time will tell. Ultimately, you know what I mean? Only time will tell. I mean, I haven't seen any major moves from any major players, right? I mean, like, even outside of music and like underground artists and like promotion and things like that, and how useful the platform is, like, regardless, there's still massive communities on here, right? Because you got to think about sports. Sports is fucking huge on Twitter, especially foreign sports, right? So you're talking about football, you're talking about American football, you're talking about like so many other things that's like super ingrained on Twitter before all the political bullshit kind of went down. So that's going to be a big rock to move, right? And like, people will say like, oh, people are only staying because the bigger creators are staying. And in reality, it's not that easy of a move. You know what I mean? It's really not that easy of a move, because you know you could have a thread situation, right? Like, you could have a thread situation where there was a big jump in popularity and hype, and you know um just a lot of hype around it, and it didn't really flesh out to be what it is. Because even like creators, right? Like, a lot of my streamers that I watch were promoting threads for like a couple of months, and then after, everybody still was just like, oh yeah, go follow me on Twitter. You know what I mean? So like, that's like the big thing with it, is like, not only sports, but you got to think about gaming, right? You got to think about competitive gaming and how a big of an impact that has across the world, right? Because the United States is only one part of the Twitter kind of population, right? You have a huge foreign part that is obviously foreign to us, right? But they're a massive part of Twitter and their cultures, and the things that they do, whether you're into sports or gaming or um, whatever it is. All these communities are still very large, and it's just not a matter of like picking it up and moving it to another platform. It's very hard for a lot of these bigger companies to fucking move. It's very, very hard, and it's got to be the right platform, right? Like, you can't just pick up this massive brand that's like sustained on Twitter for years and go expect it to work as flawlessly in Blue Sky because of like X, Y, or Z. Like, a lot of these places are businesses, right? So take gaming, for example, right? Your Phases, your Optic Gamings, your fucking so many other major companies that like don't care about politics, but they can't move as easily. Like they literally can't move as easily. That's the problem. So that's why you didn't really see a lot of like bigger creators fully endorse Threads or fully endorse Blue Sky, because like the engagement was probably going to be there, but like following and your engagement are like two completely different things, right? And most people are going to have a bigger following on Twitter because everybody's been over here longer. So essentially, you also have to factor in the fact that it's pretty much a ground zero. You know what I mean? Regardless of how you juice it, it's still a ground zero. So, kind of a waiting game. You know what I mean? Kind of a waiting game to kind of see what happens, and see where all this goes. Still the place to be when something happens in real time for memes and info. Like, I agree. Sam's Raps definitely had a really good shout there, and I completely agree. Like, it's definitely still one of the top places for breaking news, especially for like, again, people outside of the United States get a lot of valuable information, and I totally think that's crucial. I mean, you could definitely get a lot of it on Blue Sky too, but also like it's just not as sustained, and it's not as like permanent. You know what I mean? Like everybody's been on Twitter for so long, so that's why it's like very hard for people to kind of move forward and try to move their communities. Unless you're like just starting out, obviously it makes sense to you, right? Like you made a Twitter last year, why do you care if you delete your account? You know what I mean? But if you made a Twitter 12 years ago, it's a lot harder to fucking justify moving platforms. So that's the big issue with that. Um, but that's only one part of the pie, man. Again, kind of a waiting game. Obviously, at the end of the day, I think my take on this is you should be on all social media platforms regardless. You know what I mean? Like, as a creator, as an artist, as a designer, whatever you do, you should be on all platforms regardless, right? I don't care if it's Tumblr, Blue Sky, Threads, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, uh, YouTube Shorts, whatever you're doing, bro, you need to be on all these platforms regardless. You should at least have an account. 100% you should at least have an account. You shouldn't be actively posting if you don't want to, but at least make a fucking account, right? And then of course that goes into like the website conversation, right? So like obviously everybody should have a website. That's, number one, or at least a fucking link tree, right? So people can actually find you. Obviously preferably a website, but a link tree works, so that way nobody really has any power over you or your work, but you can use these tools for your advantage, right? Because that's what they are. Like, social media platforms are tools at the end of the day. You don't own anything here. You never have. We never have. Since we all created MySpace accounts back in the day, we didn't own those either. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. Like, it's just how it works. We've never owned any of this, right? The only thing you do own is what you actually create, right? So when it comes to like your website and your brand and things like that, that's permanent for you. But when it comes to some of these platforms, they need us, but we also need them. You know what I mean? They need us to help their platforms flourish, but we also need them to kind of communicate with a lot of our audiences effectively, right? So it's kind of like a give and take situation. So again, social media is kind of going through that weird time right now, but that would be like my number one for sure, like cold hard, absolutely do this is be on as many social medias as you can, right? So that way, whoever uses whatever social media can go follow you there for one, but for two, nobody has the ability to kind of take anything away from you. You know what I mean? Because if you're everywhere, it's kind of impossible to shut you down. So that's kind of like the Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky conversation in a nutshell. I assume we'll be talking about this probably multiple times, maybe sometime next year. We'll revisit the topic at like the start of January. You know what I mean? And see how the election goes and see how like things kind of calm down. Because also, we don't dive into politics here, but we can all definitely admit that when it comes to like all this election stuff, it definitely like changes the environment a bit and gets everybody kind of weird. But once that passes, I feel like things again will kind of simmer down and it's not going to really matter anymore, right? And artists can get back to being artists. So I definitely think that was like a big issue with it. But that's as far as that goes. But before we continue on, one thing I did want to talk about too is the TikTok ban. Since we're on the topic of social media and things like that, that's coming up pretty quickly. They're going to be going to trial, I think in December. They have to either sell to a US company or TikTok will be banned in the United States, which is pretty crazy to think about. Pretty crazy to think about, but that's coming up quickly. So expect that to be talked about in December a lot, for sure, cuz that'll definitely change a lot depending on what happens there. You know what I mean? So if you weren't using TikTok this whole time, I suggest you start doing it now for some kind of easy engagement, because there's no question that that has the largest population out of any social media, right? So you should be on there doing what you can, uh, or don't. You know what I mean? Or don't. I mean, it's not for everybody, but it's definitely the easiest way to kind of get in front of many eyes, for sure. So I imagine, like I said, in December, that's probably going to be a big topic of conversation, and seeing where that goes is also going to be very interesting, because that's going to trickle down into these other companies, right? So if TikTok is kind of out of the game, that's going to make Instagram and YouTube Shorts and all those other short form platforms really fucking like hunker down and try to take advantage of it. You know what I mean? So that's what's pretty crazy is like if it does get banned, that's going to change the landscape a lot for a lot of artists. You know what I mean? And a lot of people who have their whole careers on TikTok. So very interesting. Very interesting. I mean, obviously, I will be keeping my eyes very peeled, as I always do. We'll definitely be talking about it here on the show. But that is coming up. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But that's it for the social media kind of yapathon there. That was something that I definitely thought we should talk about here on the show, and kind of see what everybody's thoughts are. And of course, this will be uploaded on the Music Mondays YouTube channel. So definitely leave a comment. Let us know what you think about the social media debacle, what social medias you do use, or even just feel free to promote yourself, man. Let's fucking go. But make sure you sub to the channel. 2 videos per week, every Thursday, every Saturday. Full podcast episodes, exclusive segments, whole lot of good jazz over there on the channel. Go show these videos, these artists, and the channel some love, man. Let's fucking go.